started.
All right. So first, I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you to all our panelists for joining and being willing to be on our panel, and for the audience for being here. I think this is a really cool opportunity to bring together a bunch of NETC people and beyond. We have some awesome panelists tonight, as you guys can see. And to start us off, we have our first polling question, which we just closed. The polling question was, have you ever run a marathon? And we had 11 people say, no, they have not yet run a marathon. 7 people said they've run one, and 9 people said they run multiple. So we have a pretty spread out group tonight, which is great because that's what we wanted, a diverse audience. So I'm going to close that out. James, are there any more polling questions?
We can think about adding stuff later on.
Got it. All right, then I'll keep rolling. So first, I just wanted to introduce our panelists that we have tonight. I think a lot of these faces will be familiar to you guys, but if not, you'll meet them here. So we have 5 panelists. I'll be your moderator tonight, and I'm super excited to be here, so thank you for having me, first of all. But on our panel tonight, we have Steve Finley, Mo, Devin, Willis, and Summer. You guys probably know most of them, but I'm going to start out with some intros, and you guys can tag in if you'd like. So first off, Steve is joining us from Colorado. He is usually based in New York, but he does a little bit of everything. And a little background on Steve: he ran college at UVA, in Oregon. He was an All-American in the steeplechase. Shout out to you, Steve. That was also my event in college. Steeplechase has got to stick together. Post-collegiately, ran for Nike Track Club, became an assistant coach for 2 years there. And during his time as an assistant coach, I find this to be such a cool stat, sent 18 of your 24 athletes to the Olympics in London, which is awesome. Fast forward a little bit, he joined Nike Running in New York City, was a head coach and helped programming there. Founded the Brooklyn Track Club, which we all know and love. But the coolest fact, and I think the fact that everyone will resonate a lot with on this call, is Steve also works with Bandit. He's the head coach of Bandit's marathon training program. We all love your gear. So Steve, thanks for being here. Anything to add to the intro that I might have left out?
No, thank you, Molly. No, I've watched NETC grow from its first members and the founders back in the day, and it's just wonderful to be here and be included in something like this. And I've loved working with you guys across all different areas, from shakeout runs with Brooklyn Track Club to Bandit stuff and beyond. So really appreciate it and great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And one thing I actually forgot to add, Steve might be even more familiar of a face to you guys. He came to one of our Better Your Mile practices, and he actually helps do some of our programming for that. So he may seem a little bit more familiar than you even knew. Next up, we have Mo. Mo is a familiar face in this community. A lot of you might not know, Mo started running in 2008, and he's actually had over 20 titles throughout his career across the world. You're always everywhere, Mo. I can barely keep track of you. He studied at NIT, and after that, I guess he studied accounting and human resources and labor management at NIT. That's kind of a mouthful, Mo. Very educated over there. But something really cool about Mo is he just came back from racing the Paris Olympics. So he is our Olympian. So Mo, congratulations on that. And also another accolade that I'm not really sure a lot of people here would know. We all know Runner's World. It's a big source of knowledge that we all kind of look at. He was named one of the 50 most influential runners in the advocate category in Runner's World in 2015, which, Mo, I think that's like a really, really awesome honor. So congrats on that. And, obviously the NETC community just loves you. We're excited to hear about your expertise in professional running.
Definitely. Thanks, Molly. Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, welcome. We all know and love Willis. He's up next. Willis, he is here. He's going to be talking a little bit about his path from running 5:07 in his first marathon to cutting that almost in half to 2:46. So Willis, that's a pretty cool accomplishment. He started running back in 2017. ran a half marathon in Washington, D.C., the rock and roll half. And then kind of from there was like, wow, I actually really like running. And then I believe, Willis, what race did you run 246 in again?
So I actually ran 246 twice this past spring. I ran it once at Tokyo, so 246.53 at the Tokyo Marathon this past spring, and I ran 246.46 at the Eugene Marathon in April.
Very cool. And I think you're also coached by Mo, which is like a fun little fact there.
Yes.
And I think later in our panel here, you're going to tell us a little bit about what it means to be a 6-star finisher. But with that, yeah, we're really happy to have you, Willis. So thank you for being on the panel. Devin's calling in from New Mexico. Hey, Dev. She is a lifelong runner and self-made DC-based run coach who works with athletes across the country. And she has a waiting list. So if you want to work with Devin, get on her list now. She is an awesome coach. She's an awesome friend of mine. It's been really cool to see her kind of grow her business from just a couple of clients and be like, I think I want to be a run coach, to now having a waiting list, coaching people across the country. And something that I really admire is that you're very simplistic in the way that you coach. You kind of approach training as it should fit into your life. And I think that's really important. Focusing on communication, simplicity, and sustainability. So more excited to hear more about that too.
Very psyched to be here.
Yay. All right, and last up we got Summer. Summer is our first time marathoner on this panel. So she's going to talk about everything from what it feels like to run your first marathon to now what is it like looking back. Summer told me that she actually dreaded running the mile in, I think it was middle school, and you would be shocked now seeing, like, that little girl would be so shocked to see that you ran a marathon today. So I think that's really impressive. This past January, you started training for the Chicago Marathon, and you are now a Chicago Marathon finisher.
Yes, happy to be here and represent for all the people who didn't grow up running. If like Couch to Marathon were actually a training program, I could talk to you about that. But yes, it's very fun.
Love that. Thanks, Summer. All right. So that's all of our intros. I'm going to jump into some questions. And Summer, I'm actually going to kick it off with you. First question is, what should I expect when running my first marathon? Was there anything that surprised you? Anything that you assumed would happen that didn't? Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, first, you can expect a PR. So that's exciting. Your first race, you are definitely going to PR. I think practically, I was not expecting how much time I would need to spend considering logistics. Like obviously a marathon training block is about logging a lot of miles, but it's also about troubleshooting all the things that could go wrong on race day. And so I was surprised just at how much time I spent sort of like getting in the weeds of like, how does this outfit feel? Do I like these shoes? How many water stations are there going to be? Just like sort of thinking through anything that could go wrong and trying to stop that from happening on race day. And then the second thing is just, I was surprised by how much emotion the marathon brought up for me. Like, I think I didn't expect like how much the crowd support would mean, how much the like culmination of all my hard work would really like impact the way I felt doing the run. And just, I mean, 26.2 miles is a long time. So you go through a lot of highs and lows. I think even just starting with a ton of excitement about the race and then kind of finding your stride, maybe hitting a wall, maybe going into the pain cave, coming out on the other end. I just was surprised like what an emotional time I had running the marathon, and also how special the crowds are. I was running and this stranger with a megaphone could like read my name on my shirt, and he was like, Summer, keep going, you're doing it. And obviously like I'm kind of an emotional person, so I was like, oh my gosh, thank you for cheering for me. But it was a celebration of all the hard work that I'd done. It required so much planning, but it was so satisfying to sort of get to go through something that I had never contemplated doing before. So those were some of the things I was thinking about.
That's so awesome. And also, I think something really cool to point out is like running is just such a universal language, it feels like. I think like a lot of times you know, from everyone from first time marathoner to Mo, who's running at the Olympics, and everyone in between, like they all have those emotional roller coasters, whether they're running for 2 hours, 10 hours, or whatever. So that's a really cool thing. Steve, I'm gonna shoot a question over your way. For someone who's it's their first time running a marathon, how would you predict their time and choose a goal for training?
Oh man, it's a tough one. How to predict their time and choose a goal. So with our marathoners, and I should say I work with about 400 to 500 marathoners a year in different capacities, one-on-one, or at least in the physical space. So I get to see them a lot, and the range is, you know, the 2:15, you know, speedy ones to to athletes running 7 to 8 hours or more, and everybody's on their own journey. I think, you know, the number one thing I always talk to the athletes about is, you know, really be honest with yourself when you're setting out on this journey of 16, 20 weeks, or even a year of preparation for, or more, for the marathon. Really be honest with yourself. And, you know, the first goal you should set is how much time can I actually dedicate to training? You know, I usually, we don't talk about actual goals for the race itself until at least week 6 or 7 into the training block. You can have your thoughts. Oh, I'd love to break 4. Oh, I'd love to run 10-minute pace, or I'd love to do this, which is great. And it helps set that kind of guidepost into the future. But truthfully, it's all about, you know, can I get to the goals of, can I set my routine the right way? Can I get my, my days of the week set? Can I make sure that I'm getting to bed at 10 p.m.? Can I get my 9 hours of sleep? It's all these micro goals along the way that really help you get to a place where you can even start to think about, what is my actual marathon goal? And it helps you down that road. So I would say, you know, really get your fundamentals straight, get your routine straight, really think through the full load of your life. You know, we talk about this training load, but it's really like, you know, the running and the fitness part of it is one piece, but then, you know, family, whether you have kids, traveling a lot, work, there's so many different aspects of what your total training load is as a human, and factoring in your, you know, weddings, you know, again, travel, work, stress, et cetera, is crucial to kind of setting the trajectory where you can get to kind of setting your actual goal for the race. So always sit down, take stock, be very honest with yourself, because you know, you're going to have to work through it, and then give yourself some grace as far as like pushing off that like goal until later on, when you've established great routines and are able to execute and make sure that you're balancing life and running at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. All the life stressors really can like make or break, I think, a lot of things when it comes to marathon training. And sometimes when people sign up for a marathon, they're just like, I signed up for a marathon, I just wanted to do it. And that's just like such a small step in like the grandiose scheme of how much it's going to take, how much time and dedication, and like the little sacrifices along the way. Like, you know, maybe you don't need to go out on a Friday night because you have a 20-mile run on Saturday morning. All those little things really matter a lot. But that actually is a really good segue into our next question, which, Devin, I'm going to popcorn over to you. When should you start training? Does it matter for somebody who's like brand new at running, or like first time marathoner? Do you tell them like, you guys got to train for 6 months? Or someone who's maybe run 1 or 2, or like depending on their goal and their fitness level? What do you think?
So a lot of these questions are going to start with, it depends. So if you are a first-time marathoner, but you have been a consistent runner for a year or more, I would probably give yourself a good classic 16-week build, with the first couple weeks of that being very general base training. And then you have probably a 12-week block that's a bit more marathon specific. If you are a first-time marathoner and a new runner, which I would classify as anyone who's been running for a year or less, I would give yourself as much time as you can, primarily to adapt to the lifestyle priorities that Steve was just talking about. So even a year actually would be great. It would be good to sit down and think, I want to run a marathon this year, and start working on establishing those habits well before you actually put yourself within the constraints and demands of a training block. So give yourself a lot of time. And then for that person, you probably would be looking at a schedule that's closer to 20 weeks, even depending on individual factors. And then if you are a consistent runner and a seasoned marathoner who hasn't recently taken a big break for injury or other reasons, you could probably just work on like a 14 to 12 week build and you would be in great shape.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. And it's like almost mind-boggling to me how many weeks, 20 weeks. How many months is that? That's gotta be at least 4 or 5, right? 5 months.
Mhm.
Thanks, Phyllis. Yeah, that's a lot of time. So definitely important to do a little bit of that on the back end of planning. Mo, I'm gonna popcorn to you for the next question because I think we all really admire your way of kind of making this part of your life, but you even have a Instagram account called FunMo. So I know you have fun in your training. You also have a serious Instagram account. Sorry to out you on that, but he's got to. So I would like to hear from you, like during training, what do you consider to be like the fundamentals, your non-negotiables? Is it sleep? Is it recovery? Is it lifting? Is it just getting lots of miles in?
I mean, just like basically like taking the most important things of what makes you a better runner or makes your performance better. So definitely sleep is no questions. Like sleep is a king. Like you cannot like go into a workout with like 3 hours after going out on a party and then jump in. You have like 15 miles tempo the second day. That's not gonna work. I mean, even a lot of like good runners, Steve knows about them, like elite athlete who don't sleep, they're not gonna function for another week mentally and physically too. So sleep is very important, and not missing workouts like also is important, and being on a schedule. Like Steve mentioned that sleep, party, families, that happens when none of us like a full-time athlete, so we have other lives. So having a mentor or a coach around you to guide you on how to manage life and training, that helps a lot. But the most fundamental that I care about is commitment, of course, to the training and to the goals that you're setting. But also life happens, things changes. So you have to set like different goals into the marathon. Like if you going to New York and all of a sudden you got COVID a month out. So you have to just basically realize that you have a B goal to rely on and C goal to rely on. So setting realistic stuff for yourself will not see you to failure because it's just something out of your hand. So you just have to believe that you're doing your best, and that's the best fundamental I think actually for marathon training, doing my best and set yourself to success. And it doesn't matter where you end up then eventually, but you know yourself, I've done what it takes, and I am confident of myself, but other challenges happened that out of my hand that affected that goal. So, and have fun.
Yeah, have fun's a good motto. I think if you're not having fun, then why are you doing it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Steve, I'd be interested to know, I know you said you coach a ton of athletes. How do you help coach them through like setting those priorities? Because it is hard, like when you're picking between like going out with your friends or like, going to bed early to get up super early in the morning. I know in New York, it feels like the city that never sleeps. How do you like help your athletes to balance that?
Yeah, I mean, like Mo just said, adding on a little bit, is everybody has their own goals, and so just the first conversation is like, why is running important, and what do you want to get out of it? Some people want to finish, some people want to make the Olympic trials, some people just want to stay fit, some people just want to move and explore their city, and like there's no reason that's better than any other reason. And when you break it down, really, I don't know, as a coach, I think sometimes it's more important to give your athletes the approval to do things that maybe people are telling them, they're telling themselves that they can't do or they shouldn't do. Giving them the approval to kind of say, I just want to run because X. It doesn't have to be the fastest or to get better. Sometimes it's just to be with friends and just to be with community and kind of everything I just mentioned. So really it's starting at square one and saying, hey, what do you want out of this? And then as a coach, I try to balance their life. If they say, hey, I love swimming, I want to swim all the time, 3-4 days a week, but I also want to have a training goal. It's like, great, we can do that. Or, hey, I want to travel, I want to play soccer, I want to do I want to do all these different things. I want to stay out and go to the club till 4 a.m. Like, how do I balance running and this? Or we have people that work in hospitality and they love that lifestyle in New York, but they also really, really want to run sub-3 in the marathon. And you know, whenever you come to those individuals, it's really fun because it's like, okay, as a coach, you think, how do I bend my mind to say, okay, how do we maximize the areas that we can get the most out of you and help you achieve these very unique goals that are yours and yours alone. And those have been some of the most fulfilling coaching I've done, is just helping people live the most full life that also includes performance oriented running. And I use the word performance, but it's really performing and not necessarily like who's running the fastest or who's getting the best. Just being able to show up healthy and happy to the starting line, and being able to balance a life that you love on the way to that starting line is crucial. And I think that there's a way to do it with everyone's situation. And you know, I think that conversation and that approach from a coaching perspective is how we get the most out of our New York City athletes, and a lot of the athletes that have these like huge loads of kind of different things in life, is the way we've done it.
Yeah, I think it sounds like you're almost describing like a puzzle, like how do we fit all the pieces in? I would be curious to know, how do you feel strength training fits into some of those? I know a lot of people who are starting out in the marathon, they're like, man, I'm running so many miles and I'm exhausted. Maybe Summer, that's something you would even be able to talk on after Steve kind of gets to walks us through what he thinks on strength training. But it's like kind of overwhelming the first time you run a marathon, how tired you are, you're hungry all the time. There's all these things that come into play. What is your advice for somebody starting out with strength training and incorporating that?
Yeah, no, great question. It's one, it's always an accessibility question. You know, I think strength training in general, it costs money, you need space, and it's hard because that knowledge isn't readily available, just like running. I think luckily there's more readily available running advice. I think that's why we created our program at Bandit, which is free, you know, just to try and raise everybody's IQ, or if somebody's seeking, you know, information about training, we want to give them what they can before kind of the next level of a one-on-one coach comes in. But with strength training, a couple things, I guess. One, I think it's wonderful if you have access to it and can make it part of your routine, and you can add it in as something that you have time for. A lot of athletes don't qualify in that area in New York because we just don't, you know, it's expensive. It'll cost you $150 a week sometimes to go to classes or have a trainer or whatever it is, find the space to do it. The way we supplement it with our communities is through speed work. I think a lot of our marathon training programs have much more speed development work in them than some of the traditional ones that focus more on mileage or aerobic base work. What I find as a benefit from speed work is that one, it's a great injury prevention tool. You're loading the muscles much heavier than they normally would on an easy run by doing faster stuff. We're able to stress the range of motion for not only the muscles, but also for kind of the brain itself when you're challenging these faster paces. We always start off the season by saying, well, when's the last time you ran an all-out 400? And usually the answer is, you know, what is that and how do I do it? And then we go from there. I think we push the athletes to kind of challenge themselves on a speed basis, which I've always held as the substitute for the athletes that don't have access to or kind of are able to schedule strength training in their routines. Now, if you are able to schedule in your routine, I recommend 2 days a week. And with our marathon trainers or runners, one of the big things is just the marathon takes a lot of muscular strength. And a lot of people, you know, whether you're out there for, you know, 2 to 6, 7 hours, you're beating your muscles up that whole time. So speed work can help with that. But then also if you're able to get 2 days in the gym to load your body appropriately, and even get your range of motion and your mobility in a better place, those can all be great benefits of strength training. And I would recommend, but there are ways to do it that don't involve the gym, is maybe the point that I wanted to bring through.
Yeah, I love that. And I know gyms can be, I mean, in Washington, D.C., just like I'm sure similarly to New York, they're so expensive sometimes to be a member of a gym. And, you know, you want to be able to make room and space for everything in your life, but sometimes it just doesn't fit, like the time or so it's neat that you suggest doing some speed work. I think that's a really good form of strength, you know, as you're like your muscles are all firing together.
And
It's a good
Molly,
way
if
to-
I can jump in, I just saw Devin hit on something here.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe Devin, you want to jump in, but I just want to say she mentioned that single leg. You know, I think people single leg exercises are fantastic because they force your body weight to be on one leg. And a lot of people don't realize it. We always talk about it's kind of a funny thing of like running is just a series of single leg squats. And we always laugh about it, but it is something that's very true. Devin, I don't want to take your point completely, but I just wanted to mention it because I saw it in the chat.
Oh, good. Amplify. Yeah, one thing you can do with zero equipment is literally hop up and down like you're on a pogo stick, and you can do that on 2 feet and 1 foot at a time. It's a great warm-up exercise. It's also a great plyometric for keeping your ankles, Achilles, and calves pretty strong.
Yeah, I think kind of what I'm hearing from you, Deb, is just like kind of sticking to the basics. Like start with the basics, don't make it overcomplicated.
Yes, I think yes, there are strength exercises that are particularly good for runners. However, there is no like magic routine or magic secret exercise that is more good for runners than other stuff. The best strength program is, like Steve said, one that's accessible to you, that you can do regularly, and that doesn't exhaust you.
Yeah, totally agree. Keep it simple, right? And then Summer, I have one kind of same on this similar topic. When you were training for your first marathon, was there anything like what did you find the most challenging to fit in or like get used to the marathon training cycle with like so much running?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it a bit. I would say definitely just figuring out how to incorporate this into my schedule. Like suddenly, especially running in DC in the summertime means you start very early. And then I run for long periods of time because I'm a slower runner. So I had to start very early. So even getting used to like, oh, I'm going to stay in on Friday night because I'm waking up at 4 a.m. so I can try to beat the heat and the humidity on Saturday morning. But I know that trying to run in the hottest part of the day will be really challenging. And then I think to the strength training point that we were just talking about, I initially was doing no strength training and then just started as the mileage picked up to feel like a ton of pain in my knees and like lower back and different things like that. And I think was very fortunate to be able to go to PT, but getting a lot of like exercise band related things that I could do as like activations before starting to run, and like having someone sort of point out where the weakness was in my muscles that I wouldn't have noticed because I'd never run at this volume before was so helpful. And so I think if that is available, being able to just like work with a doctor who can say, oh, your knees hurt, it's because your hips are weak. And then sort of, here's what you can do to fix that was really helpful.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think also having that like third person perspective, because there have been times when I'm like, I am so strong. This is the strongest I've ever been. And then it's so humbling when you go to a PT and they're like, lift your leg this way. And I'm like shaking and I can't do it. I'm like, shoot, I guess I'm not strong there, but I'm strong in other ways. So that's definitely all really good points about strength training. So I want to round up our first time / basics question with something for you, Willis. So Willis, I think a lot of you might know some background on Willis, but he is has facts on facts about marathons. He's a really good predictor of, what will the Boston qualifier be this year? Willis, you predicted it within a 3-second margin. That was incredible. But my question for you is, do you have a marathon or maybe 1 or 2 marathons that you would recommend for a first timer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good question. So I actually have a list of beginner-friendly marathons in front of me. Yeah, so some of the beginner-friendly marathons I recommend. There's one that's in our backyard that will be happening in 3 days, the Marine Corps Marathon. That also happens to be my first marathon when I first ran it back in 2017. Just because of it's first come first serve, anyone can sign up, and it's very beginner friendly. Also, the crowd support is incredible, and I've seen people of all ability levels run it, and it's just incredible and inspiring to see. So that'll be one of my recommendations. And another beginner friendly marathon that I would recommend that's happens to be one of the major marathons is the Chicago Marathon. Chicago Marathon is a fast and flat course, so very beginner friendly. The logistics are very easy to deal with. You start and end at Grant Park, basically in downtown Chicago. So getting to and from the start area is very easy peasy. And the hotels in the area is usually like within the downtown, so just getting to and from is very accessible, especially with the the transit system there. So yeah, those are my two recommendations: Chicago Marathon and our very own Marine Corps Marathon here in DC.
Yeah, those are good ones, Willis. And I know Summer, you just ran the Chicago Marathon, so it sounds like that went pretty well from what we've seen.
Yes, can totally co-sign. I mean, I don't have anything to compare it to, but I had a great time running Chicago, so I would totally recommend it.
Very cool. And actually, I'm just going to pile on for the Marine Corps. That has been my only marathon and my first marathon. And something that I will add that I think was really nice was just having it in your backyard. Like I would recommend, I know there's so many marathons to pick from, but I loved having it somewhere close, somewhere that I could like eat food that I knew the night before. It was just so cool to see all my friends and family out on the course. It was kind of a last minute decision. So the logistics were pretty straightforward, especially being from DC. And it was really cool to see so many parts of the city. It's so rare that you see like that much of the city in a day. But I think you would get that in most marathons where you just get to see a really awesome view of the city. So maybe that's part of your choices as well. Like what city do you want to see along the way? Okay, so I have some questions that are a little bit more down into the details of training. Still can be for a beginner, for someone more advanced. But Devin, I'm going to shoot this question to you. What is a tune-up race, and when would you recommend someone does this in their marathon build cycle?
I would say if someone wants to do it, thing number one, tune-ups are optional. So a lot of times in the thick of marathon training, it can all feel very monotonous, and mentally you reach a point where you feel pretty tired all the time and you're kind of like, am I getting any fitter? I don't know. And you can just feel kind of stale. At the same time, you will probably want to get a check for how that fitness is developing. So enter tune-up race. This is something you can do anywhere from, I would say, like 6 or 7 weeks to no sooner than 4 weeks out from your goal race. And it will hopefully do a couple things. It will give you a little like emotional rejuvenation that, oh yeah, I do like racing. Running is fun. Being in a race environment is a great way to shake up a workout. And it can give you that check on how your training has been going. If you have a goal for the race you're running, if you're able to hit that, that's a good indicator. Usually for a marathon, a tune-up race that would be smart to run would be like a 10-mile or a half marathon, because it will give you an indicator of your marathon fitness, but it won't be as exhausting. And how you run that tune-up race is sort of up to you, or up to you and your coach if you work with one. I've done it where I have folks run the whole thing at marathon effort with an extra warm up and cool down as a long run, just as like a bigger workout with some people around. You can also decide to do it as a tempo effort with recovery periods. You can also decide to do the first chunk at marathon effort and then speed up and see where you land. So the strategy for the race is up to you, but I think it can be a beneficial way to check on your fitness without exhausting yourself and reinvigorate training at the point where it kind of starts to suck a little. So
yeah, that's a good answer. It also, there's always that moment in training where you're like, oh, why am I doing this? And those races kind of bring it back where you're like, okay, that was really fun. I had a lot of endorphins. I feel really fit. I want to do another. It's almost like why the second people finish a marathon, they're already ready to sign up for another. It's just that feeling.
But my caveat for tune-ups with strength training is it is another thing to sign up for, pay for, think about logistics for, potentially travel to. So just consider, like, is it easy? So for example, the DC half for all our local people was great because it was in our backyard and it wasn't super expensive. Just consider if the juice is worth the squeeze when deciding on a tune-up race. This is my final piece of advice.
Good analogy. I like it. Easy is often best. But as we're kind of talking more about training, Mo, what are your thoughts on threshold workouts and why are they important for training? I know a lot of times in training, you do kind of like a speed session, threshold, and then maybe some sort of long run. But tell us about how you work that in, what the purpose of it is, your recommendations on it.
I mean, just in a basic definition for the threshold, I mean, threshold workouts are like it's something where you go for a tempo at marathon pace, but also you're not hitting like the mark where the marathon should feel. Like, for example, if you're going like for 10-mile threshold, I mean, you should feel like your RBE should be like 5 to 6 around there. Like you can sustain that for another 14, 16 miles again for after the 10 miles. But I feel the threshold are painful and a lot of people don't like them, especially the tempos, because it's just like, oh my God, it's like there's no rest. There's like you on the go and basically like you're just wondering how you're gonna end up doing it. And if you're not hitting it right, you're gonna feel like, oh, I'm not fit. But actually, you need to practice pain because the pain will happen in the marathon, and you have to disconnect that. And as much as you do it in practice, as much as easy it will be during the marathon. So definitely, number one, like basic training for marathon threshold and knowing exactly how does it feel running that marathon pace or half marathon pace. Definitely, threshold can be varied between for different practices for different programs like 5K or 10Ks, but for the marathon. Usually we do it every, like in the, basically when we increase intensity, just to get the adaptation of how does it feel running that marathon pace. And if you can nail that for 14 miles, that will be your marathon pace. And then if you're comfortable, I mean, you're not going to be comfortable in training. I've never felt comfortable doing a marathon simulation. I mean, when we do like 10 and then another 10 of the actual marathon goal pace, I never felt comfortable. It's always hard. It's always because remember, you're not tapering for it. So do not put yourself to failure if you're not feeling great on the thresholds because you're doing them with a lot of mileage. You're doing them by yourself sometimes. There's no crowd, there's no nutrition in the course. So you have to just make sure you're not setting up yourself to failure when you're doing these thresholds. But definitely number one, a workout is the threshold, in my opinion, and long runs. And then comes the track workout is just like just to feel the turnover and aerobic pace. But definitely threshold for me, a workout, B workout, long runs, and then basically the track workout. But it varies between a lot of athletes, like because a lot of people starting new to the running, they just need to focus on long runs and covering the distance. And then from there, you gradually upgrade to tempos and thresholds. So every athlete is different. So, but yeah, but the idea is always having fun and practice that pain.
Yeah, it's like that moment of getting comfortable being uncomfortable and seeing how long you can bear it. I know those tempos are hard. And Mo, I know well, I was going to say we've done tempos together. What I really mean to say is Mo has run next to me while I've done some tempos a couple times, which has been really great. And I think something that's really important in marathon training is having a partner. If you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. So like track work, you can do it alone. But those farther, longer efforts are really helpful to have training partners and people along with you for the ride. I see Colin saying, yeah, you need to practice the pain. That was a good quote, Mo. And I think it's really important. Like running is such a universal sport and brings people together. So bringing people along with you really makes it a little bit more bearable. Steve, when you're programming for people, I'm curious to know how do you coach athletes through tempos that they approach the tempo, they try it out, and they're like, oh, this just sucks. I'm not having a good time doing the tempo. And I know I've been there. It took me a really long time to get good at tempos, but how do you coach athletes and like get them excited about tempos and make it not something that's such a scary, big chunk of time?
Yeah, that's an age-old question. Because it's also harder, normally on the track or in a lot of ways, you'd be like, oh, teammates, get some people around them and like, let's go out and do something together because it makes it so much easier. There's two approaches I use for the tempo workouts. The first is, tempo workouts can be anything, right? It's like 4 miles to 16 miles, depending on what we're doing. First thing that I'd say is, if I'm dead set on, hey, it's got to be a 6, 8, 10, 12-mile tempo. We have to do it. The number one thing I'll do is ask them to do it progressively. And I lean into that so hard with our athletes. And the reason is because, you know, if you see an athlete, like a college athlete or a high school athlete or somebody you're working with every day, you know what they look like, you know what's going on, you can get a read on them. With our athletes, we see them, you know, for 75 minutes a week sometimes. And we don't know what those other life factors are. And I keep talking about those, but one of the things you can do to eliminate life factors is to do progressive work. You might think you know what's going on with your body or your mind or your stomach or your energy levels, whatever, your stress, anxiety, go down the list. You might think you know what's going on with your body that day, but odds are you probably don't. And when we do, say, a 10-mile progressive tempo, I'll have them start at marathon pace or just faster, or even slower than that sometimes. And they'll work, depending on the athlete or the workout, I'll ask them to drop down 3 to 5 to 10 seconds sometimes per mile over the course of maybe the last 80% of that workout. So they'll start, get warmed up, get comfortable, know that they can handle that early, slower paces, and then ask them to start to just slowly press and squeeze down and get faster and faster and faster. And what this does is, you know, say they really didn't understand what their body was feeling that day. You'll get to mile 6 or 7, you'll be like, you know what, I'm going to stay here for a little while. And it takes away that need to go out and say, okay, I need to run race pace for 10 miles. And that's that. Instead, what you get is you start slower than race pace, you work through race pace. And if you're feeling good, you can get faster than race pace and finish off on a really high note. And it allows the athletes to come in, know that it's not a big, scary workout per se, lets them kind of ease into it. And then ultimately, if they're having a really good day and they're feeling great, they can really press the last, you know, say 25, 30% of that workout and come away feeling like, you know what, that wasn't so bad. I felt better than I thought I did. I really got warmed up into it. And that helps tremendously to balance out kind of life and training for our athletes, at least. And then the second one I'd say is more simpler, but to break them up. You know, we'll do 4 by 2 mile, or we'll do 3 by 3 mile or something like that. And what you're doing there is you're saying, you know what, this is a tough workout. Like going out and doing a 9-mile tempo is tough. How do we maintain quality and maintain motivation while the athlete's out working out alone on a lot of occasions in bad weather, humidity, whatever it is? You want to keep the motivation high. And you also, you know, from a training perspective, you want to keep the quality high. And if an athlete goes out and say by mile 5, they're like, you know what, I feel like crap, it's not going so well, I got a stitch in my side, whatever it is, you know, they'll fall off and suddenly you won't get a great workout day. But when you're breaking up and you're saying you're doing 4 by 2 mile, you know, you can start on the slower end, work your way through, or be consistent with the paces. And you can still get a lot out of that workout, sometimes even more than you'd get out of an 8-mile run, depending on what the training, you know, what type of training you're trying to get out of the day. But that progressive for the longer ones, and then again, just kind of the breaking up those tempo runs into smaller segments are 2 of the major ways that we'll go about kind of keeping the motivation and making sure the quality stays there.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I love progression runs personally because I think my brain shuts off when you say do 10 miles at this pace. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a really long time. That's going to take me over an hour running at that pace. Are you kidding? But doing a progression run gives you like that grace of like, okay, start here and see how fast you can go. And then, you know, with a couple miles to go, every once in a while, I'll really take a bet on myself and just be like, I feel good. I'm going to go for it. And it's almost surprising how quick you can kind of get your legs turned over by giving yourself the grace at the beginning. And then you look at the workout as a whole and walk away really proud of it. So I like that way of kind of breaking it up, or progression runs. Deb, do you have anything to add to that? I feel like you have some good pointers for your athletes on progressions.
Yeah, progressions. We could talk about progressing during a run, progressing during a cycle, progressing over your lifetime. But I think the thread through Steve's response is being more intuitive and being flexible and not being so tied to the thing on your wrist, which takes time to learn. I think like data is fascinating and important. However, like Steve was saying, the machines that we all live in are very complicated and they change day to day. And I think it is very important to listen to how you are feeling on a given day and trust that there isn't actually like a cutoff in what adaptation is going to happen if you run 6:32 versus 6:25. Like the cutoffs are not that sharp. So give yourself a lot of grace with going on your, like what the effort should be on the day. You'll be fine. Breaking up tempos is great. Something I like to do with my athletes is telling them, okay, I want you to accumulate an hour at tempo pace. I will give you up to 4 breaks you can take whenever you feel like you're hitting that red line. And each of those breaks can be up to 2 minutes. Have fun with that. And then some people, they actually like, oh, I didn't need a break at all. Other people are like, I'm really happy I had those. But especially on like a really hot day or you're feeling really gross, it gives you some flexibility. And I think it also teaches you to listen to where that red line is when you're crossing over from tempo effort into pushing too far.
I really like that. I'll hire you. I want 4 breaks too. That's awesome, Deb. So now we've talked about like tempos and thresholds and progressives, and Mo talked about A, B, and C workouts, kind of having the track is that like extra bonus workout, and tempos, progression runs being your A, like this is kind of what you got to get over, or this is the big workout of the week, and then the long run's really important, is time on your feet as well. But Willis, this next question is for you. Flipping to the lighter side of things, what are your thoughts on what your easy pace / effort should look like in a marathon training cycle, like those easy days that we sprinkle throughout your week?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So to start, I think this question can go a number of ways, or to answer the question can go a number of ways, but I'm going to frame it in a way that's accessible to everyone, regardless of whether you have a heart rate monitor or not. So how we're going to frame this is that your easy pace effort should feel like you are able to hold a conversation when you're talking. So when you're on a run, and you, at an easy effort, you should be able to have a conversation with someone. You shouldn't be running so fast to the point where you are not able to hold a conversation. If you're at a point where you can only talk very briefly in short spurts during your quote unquote easy runs, then there's a chance that your easy runs may be too hard, and maybe you should dial it back. And as for easy efforts, I would probably say on an RPE scale, it should, on a scale of 1 to 10, it should be anywhere between 1 to 3. It should be very comfortable. Easy runs are a great way to be able to get your miles in without the added stress, and also in between workouts. Easy runs are a good way to basically shake out those sore legs and allow you to recover, allow you to adapt, allow your body to absorb the benefits of that workout. Because when you do a workout, it's hard on your body. You need time to recover. And doing easy runs at the intended effort, wherever you may be in your running journey, is a good way to do that. But in order to do so, I would probably say easy runs, conversational pace. Easy runs at conversational pace. And to illustrate this, for me, personally, I love my easy runs, and my coach here, Coach Mo, can really like attest to this. For my easy runs, I make sure to keep it really easy, like at conversational pace. I really don't care about the pace. I really do not care about running at a certain pace. I'm not, like, as Devin said earlier, I'm not a slave to my watch. So in that
Maybe
sense,
almost a good time to take your watch off for some of those easy runs.
Yeah.
I think we could use the example. Actually, one of the first times I met Mo in one of the first runs we did together, Mo, one told me he was training for the Olympics, but wanted to run like 9:30 pace for 90 minutes. And I was like, okay, this guy, he wants to run 9:30 pace, but he's also training for the Olympics. And then I was very humbled when I went home and Googled him. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's actually going to be in the Olympics. And then he was.
Yeah.
But Mo, I think even you can attest, like, you truly, can you tell us about what does your easy day pace look like usually?
I just don't really, I just go for a run and just enjoy. Like when I mainly like train, like, so most of the time I train solo on the easy runs. So I just go out there and just run, really don't have to think about what's the pace you're going for. I started now. I mean, I used to not do that. I started looking around like the trails like I'm running at and just enjoying that. And I start to enjoy more of it than I used to be like, oh my God, these are like junk miles. But definitely, I mean, just it should be as well as say like should be as easy as possible. But also sometimes people feel more fatigue when running easy. So recommendation after that, just after when you finish the run, just go do a couple of strides so you can just feel fresh and ready for next workout. But yeah, easy is always good because there's a pain the one of the days you're gonna come. So enjoy the easy and enjoy the pain too.
Yeah, it's kind of like you lean into the good days and kind of ride through the bad ones. It always reminds me of a quote by Alexi Pappas. If you guys are familiar with her, she says it's the rule of thirds. 30% of your runs are going to feel good, 30% of your runs are going to feel like okay, and 30% of them are going to feel absolute crap. And you kind of just have to ride the highs of the really good runs and the mediocre runs on the days that you feel especially crappy. And just know that not every run's going to feel awesome, but even sometimes easy runs don't feel awesome. So lots of thoughts on everything training here.
Yeah. But one thing Devin mentioned the Strava things. I think that's something a lot of people get. Two things that I feel the devil for runners, Strava and GPS. So those are devils for all of us. So yeah, just be careful of that. Thanks, Devin.
Yeah, I'll also echo what Coach Moat said. Like, yeah, like Strava does open a window to everyone's training, but also gets people, to think about, oh, I can, like, if this person can do this, so can I, and kind of leads to a situation where it might not necessarily be the right, right fit, and and to allude to what I said earlier, like, yeah, like what one person can do may not necessarily be applicable for another. So yeah, I would probably say like honestly, at the end of the day, I would say don't care about what others think about your paces, especially for easy runs. As long as you're out there just doing the easy runs and just enjoying yourself, and just getting the miles in. Yeah, who gives a crap about what others think about your pace? I think, especially in the era of instant gratification, we just have to remember at the end of the day, it's just for us, not for anyone else.
That's such a good saying. Yeah, do it for you. I really love that, Willis. That's so important to remember. The reason that you're doing this is for you, not to show anyone else that you can do it, because you got to find it within yourself and find the motivation. That's such an important thing to remember. And you're so right. I'm actually not often on Strava because I just like to run for me and I don't always like to post what I'm doing. And sometimes it really can be the thief of joy because you're looking at what other people who, maybe you guys have a similar marathon PR and they're running their easy days at 7-minute pace, and you're running your easy days at 10-minute pace. And you're like, maybe I should be doing more, but in reality, you just have to do what's right for you. So all really good points. Okay, I have a couple more questions that we had prepared, and then we're going to go to some audience. We had a survey earlier that we sent out and some people wrote in some questions, but one more question for you, Mo. I can never keep track of you. You are traveling all over the world, always racing. How do you deal with tips for racing out of town? I know it's hard with like food and normalcy. Do you have any tips for folks on the call on how you manage that?
If you're going like out of town, definitely you just have to set up your your sleep hours, basically, just in terms of like when you're landing. If your race is on Sunday, for example, you're landing like Wednesday, just make sure that you are like if you land in the morning, don't go to sleep. Basically, just go outside, go for a run, just to make sure that you're not gonna fall asleep where back home is sleeping. So just that very important, the jet lag, matching with where you are. But definitely in terms of nutrition, just keep it playing. I mean, we're runners. Our food is boring the last 4 days of the race. So before the race, so just keep it playing. Avoid like fresh vegetables that are not cooked. Just hydrate a lot and just make sure that you're not trying anything new until after the race. After the race, just go eat whatever you want, enjoy whatever you want. But before the race, do not risk anything new to your system, because if you get up sick, you're out. Because if you're not healthy, you're not gonna line up on the starting line. So just keep it simple and read about the food of where you are, and And just bring all your own snacks sometimes. Like a lot of guys goes to Kenya, usually they bring their own protein bars, and just because they can't eat, for example, the meat there. So just to not to get sick. So yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah, love that theme of keeping it simple. Speaking of fueling and bars and all that, Summer, during your first marathon, did you have a fueling strategy?
Yes, and I would say I started with the wrong one. I would say I got most of my information about planning all this stuff from Instagram, which is exciting that there's so much information available, but also to Willis's point earlier, what works for a run influencer may not be the thing that works for you. So I think what was helpful was sort of using my long runs as trial and error. And so I tried out different gels to see like what could I handle while I was running. I tried out different like timing. Was I going to take gels based on mileage? Was I going to take gels based on the time it took me to run? I practiced different breakfasts, and then eventually yes, that's a great point, James. They might be getting paid to tell you that a product is awesome. And so I think ultimately trying to figure out what worked for me, and then I just stuck with it. And I think sometimes some people are very like, they like surprises, and like they kind of like to be like to just see what happens. But for me, I would say that like information is your friend when it comes to something big like a marathon. And so just trying to give myself as much practice as I could to see what was going to work on race day really made a huge difference for me. Yeah.
Did you have a favorite gel that you like to fuel with, or did you use gels?
I did use gels. I ended up really liking the like Huma gels, specifically like the strawberry flavor. I thought those were great. I also tried with caffeine, and I found that didn't work well for me. So I think even being able to get down to a specific, like, okay, on mile 16, when I really am sad that I'm still running, like what's going to feel like a fun treat? It's a strawberry Huma gel. So
Yeah, you definitely want something to look forward to. I remember there was a cupcake flavor goo, which sounds really gross right now, but in the moment while I was running, I thought it was great. I thought of it as a treat. Definitely not liking that, but I thought it was great. That was also very naive first marathon, did not plan this out well me. So maybe don't recommend. Definitely love that you tried it out. Devin, a question from you that the audience had written in to our survey was, how do you deal with burnout and prevent injuries with increased volume and intensity? And this person actually wanted to hear, especially for women. I know there's like some different caveats with men and women in racing. I feel like you'd be a good person to talk on that.
Sure. So, like that this person mentioned nutrition in concert with preventing burnout and preventing injury, because those things are related. Generally speaking, to prevent burnout, you do need to take breaks from training. That is part of the training cycle, is the rest and recovery period. You cannot be on a steady incline forever. It won't work. This can be a tough thing to have to learn as a new runner, because for the first little bit, you will continue to improve linearly. And then all of a sudden that will stop and you'll think, I need to do even more. Actually, that's a good time to take a step back, especially after a big race. Take a true break. Nothing is going to happen if you take 2 weeks off of running. Most of us, except for Mo and Steve, are not professionals. This is not our livelihood, and your body will thank you for like giving it adequate time to calm down. After a marathon, everything is really inflamed. You're coming off of months of like really hard work. Give yourself adequate time to recover, and don't sign up for any races within 24 hours of finishing a race, because that's not your logical brain. Don't set yourself up for your next training cycle before you've given yourself time to recover and decide what you actually want to do within the next year of your running life. As far as preventing injury, be honest with yourself about what level of intensity and volume you can actually handle. This is another area where like looking at Instagram and Strava and stealing training plans from whoever is not a great idea, because your journey is an N of 1. So you know your body, you know what you need. talk to the people you trust. Also, preventing injury, strength training can be really valuable. Also, just getting adequate sleep is key. And then finally, the nutrition piece. Runners have different nutritional needs than the general population significantly. We need a lot more carbs, we need more protein, and we need to eat more frequently, and just a lot more calories in general. So it, again, you see lots of stuff on the internet about like how much to eat of this or that. It's not the advice that's tailored for you. You need to be eating enough to fuel yourself. Underfueling in your day-to-day diet and underfueling during runs will mean that you are on a decline all the time, and you cannot dig yourself out of that hole after a while. So prioritize nutrition. Carbs are not the enemy. Protein is not the enemy. Fat's not the enemy. We need all of them. And if you're really struggling with this, you need to seek help from a dietitian, especially before you start going down the road of like supplementing or trying to mess with your diet significantly. I know it's expensive, but if you are having a lot of challenges or feeling like you have persistent fatigue or that you're not able to progress or you feel really burnt out, it's probably a sign that you need to seek professional help from someone that can look at you and your individual situation and stop trying to solve the problem yourself, because you probably need some extra advice.
Sure. Yeah, Dev, that's really all really great stuff. And I know a lot about marathon training. It's not just the running, it is the sleep and recovery, but also the way that you choose to fuel your body. And runners, I know everyone has different dietary needs, but like really dialing that in and figuring out what works for you can make a huge difference in your training cycle. Something else that I just want to add here is a lot of people kind of get like baseline labs and stuff done when they're going into a training cycle, which is something that I think is really helpful, because then you set that baseline of what is your body at before it's stressed out. Then maybe halfway through the cycle, I know, Mo, you've told me that you do blood work pretty routinely occasionally. Routinely occasionally is opposite, but you've mentioned that you've done blood work, and it kind of gives you a baseline of like, here's where I was at, then I stressed my body out and here's what happened. And then maybe at the end, when you're done with the marathon, okay, and here's what I maybe depleted from my stores. And that helps you like really give a good gauge and get in tune with your body, which I think is pretty neat. On the fueling topic, we have a lot of questions about gels and how to approach that. Steve, I'm wondering if you have like how you advise your athletes to approach that, because you know, you can practice a million times over, but in actual race day, when you're running 26 miles, what do you recommend to your athletes as far as like how often to take a gel, what kinds of gels you take, when maybe caffeinated versus not caffeinated is appropriate? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's a million different schools of thought. I think I was very lucky earlier in my career to work with some professionals from the Nike Sports Research Lab when I was working with Nike, and that was during the time that they were doing a lot of work with Eliud Kipchoge, and brands like Morton were coming to the front, and you know, and I think at the highest level, right, the scientists say, you know, every 25 minutes you need to be taking a gel, and that's like, okay, cool, that's where the baseline is for those guys. But for everybody else, it's really trial and error. I think for our athletes, we're going through a 250 person in-person training program right now in New York for the New York City Marathon next week, and they come twice a week. We have long runs, and I think it is one of the more personal things, right? It's just like nutrition. I think you have to find what tastes good, 2, what does the job for you, and then 3, how your body's going to react. The baseline things I'll say is that I haven't had a lot of luck with athletes taking caffeine before, say, mile 18. I think if you're struggling with anything that's bowel related or digestion related, it's good to avoid that when you're just getting moving. But it is a great kick in the butt at the end of the race to just really get you to kind of, you know, those waves that Summer was talking about during the race, right? You're going in and out of these places of motivation and horror, and you're just trying to make it through. Caffeine can really help you get through at least 1 or 2 of those last miles if you want to put it later in the race. But all that to say, I think it's worth trying everything out. It's worth figuring out what tastes good to you. And, you know, if you have to spend $30 or $40 throughout the cycle, and there's no rule too on you can only take gels during long runs. I think you can also take them if you're going out for 40 minutes, you know, just try it out and see how it feels and see what it does to your body. I think being a little bit of an investigator into yourself is an exciting proposition of saying, okay, I need to understand, what this is going to do to me and how it's going to feel. And I would always suggest trying things at least twice, if not more, as you're going through that cycle. So yeah, there's a million ways to do it, but find the brands that, maybe either are recommended to you, maybe it goes well, maybe it doesn't, but seek out what tastes good first and then what does the job, and then put it into practice. And don't be afraid to keep trying new things and to go back and check things out. It really is a lifelong experience. I have runners who've done over 40 marathons and they're still switching things up and seeing how it can be better. We talked at the beginning of the season with our athletes and we say the marathon is, it's 1,000 little variables that you're trying to get right. And it's kind of an impossible task, but continuing to work on it, continuing to investigate what works, what doesn't, and then realizing that your body's going to change over time as well is all very important perspective to bring to the fueling conversation.
Yeah. It's like a little power boost every time. I remember when I was running a marathon, if I'd get like really down in the dumps, I think it might have been like mile 20 or 21, I had a caffeinated gel and I was like, I'm good now. And I don't know that I really was good. I just finished the race. But yeah, that's definitely good advice, and trial and error is your best friend in these kinds of situations. You mentioned New York Marathon, which brings me to my next question. Willis, New York's coming up next week. I know you've run it before. Do you have any tips there's like a lot of bridges and lots of ups and downs in that marathon. Do you think people should kind of keep the same effort the whole time, or is it helpful to like slow down or have a strategy around that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And thanks for asking that question. I think it's very timely given that the New York City Marathon is next week. As someone who has finished the New York City Marathon 4 times, I will say the New York City Marathon course is tricky. It is hilly, and you will need to have strategies involved in order to be successful in that course. I will say that the course, and Steve, you can chime in anytime about this, but the course profile for New York City Marathon is a lot of rolling hills and a lot of bridges, and there's not going to be large flat sections anywhere on that course. And with that in mind, given that there's so many rolling hills and so many bridges on that course, you're not going to be able to run. It's not a PR course. I'll just put it that way. It is not a PR course. You're going to be run anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes, depending on ability level. You're going to be running anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes slower than the times you're going to be able to run on a comparable flat course. So to answer the question, I would say it is better to basically aim for constant effort during the uphills or going up the bridges, and make sure to use the right effort on a downhill, especially on downhills on the back end of a uphill, or when you are coming down from the bridges. So for the uphills, I would say you just go when you run up the hill, just back off and just go by effort. Make sure it's comfortable and exert the same effort that you are running the marathon. But understand that while you're exerting the same effort, your paces are going to be slower, and that's totally okay. And when you go down, go down the hills, there's always a temptation to just book it down the hills or down a bridge. But just make sure, but also keep in mind your quads exist, and you do not want to shred your quads like that. And especially for a marathon, when you have so long to go. I think I've seen people, especially this is for New York City, I've seen people just book it down the Queensboro Bridge around mile 16 and thinking that they're home free when ahead of them it's the last 10 miles with a lot of rolling hills, one bridge, and people start bonking out around mile 20, 21 because they basically exhaust everything and they have nothing to give. And when they go up mile 22, 23 up towards Central Park, that one last hill just completely decimates them because they unleashed everything earlier, and then that's the tipping point where they just completely fall apart.
Yeah.
So you got to be very, 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 very careful when running on a tricky course like New York. You just have to go by effort and know that your paces may not be the paces that you would tip. Your goal pace may not be the goal pace that you'd be able to run on a comparable flat course.
What, Trevor?
James, I think you might have come off mute, maybe.
Not a lot.
Is Matt.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
I thought it was a ghost.
well, so that was a good answer. And I know the concrete jungle, right? You think of concrete, flat sidewalks. Like to me, I went to go cheer, and the people that I was cheering from finished and were like, "Wow, it's so hilly on this course." And I was like, "What do you mean? You ran around New York City, but I know Central Park is pretty hilly." Steve, did you have any? I mean, it's your backyard, and I know a lot of your runners and athletes probably run New York City because it's also their backyard. Do you have any strategies for that for them?
Willis, I might hire you to come in and talk to everybody, because he hit on like the major points. To be honest, it's like controlled effort is everything. I think we always talk to the athletes in New York about discipline, because it's, it's really slowing down on the uphills and making sure your heart rate doesn't spike, and then it's slowing down on the downhills to make sure that you don't tear your quads up. And if you balance that correctly, you can have a great last 10 miles. But every ounce of everyone's, thought and emotion that day pushes them to charge up the uphills and to charge down the downhills, and that the flat will take care of itself. And the reality is that, yeah, if you don't run that course with
Like we might have lost Steve for a second there, but I like what he was saying. I think you have to be really careful about the uphills and the downhills, and
you
not
need to be hitting
totally.
7-minute pace. Exactly. And the truth about New York is you're gonna have a 7:30 and you're gonna have a 6:40, and you can't worry about that. You just have to use your feeling and base your effort off of it. And you can't trust the people around you, because they're probably doing it wrong, to be honest. So, Will, it sounds like you've taken a lot of great lessons away from the course, and I really appreciated your take on that.
Yeah, no, totally. I really appreciate those kind of words, Steve. Like I ran it 3 times, and of course, like what you said, like I thought I could do more than I realistically could, and yeah, I had a great time in New York, but it was not an optimal race. And then only until last year, when I realized like that I need to be strategic about it, is when I had probably the best New York City marathon of my life so far.
That's amazing.
It's a huge
That's
difference.
great to hear. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and New York's such a cool place to run. I even love when I got to cheer. I think that there were tears in my eyes half the race, because people were just so like emotional, and the crowd was so emotional, and it was so cool to see people go through all these different emotions. It was the year Shalane Flanagan ran, so I saw her run by and was like, "Oh my gosh, that's Shalane Flanagan! Holy goodness, she's so close." And I think one thing to point out with all of this, though, is like not every marathon has to be a PR marathon. Sometimes it is just for the vibes. Shalane had done, I'm not going to remember the name of the project she did, but she did something like 6 marathons in, a short amount of time. And she gave herself a really big range, but she got to see all of these cool places and run all these really spectacular venues. So sometimes it's just about completing it. And 26 miles is a really hard time to compare paces and courses, and you kind of got to take that into account, I think, for all of that. I want to continue down the fueling question, and this one's for you, Mo. How do you carb load? Like, when do you start carb loading? Do you carb load for the entire training cycle, or is it different for race week? How do you approach that?
Well, I mean, carb loading would be like, we start like the race is Sunday, we start Thursday, like 3 days out. Like the evening of Thursday, Friday, morning, lunch, dinner, all carbs, and then and Saturday, of course. But definitely avoiding fiber from Friday and Saturday. Just keep it plain. But definitely carbs is always important after workouts, before the workouts. It's just like you cannot be under fueling when you train for a marathon. So you just have to be very careful on that, because a lot of people get a lot of like stress reaction and all of that things just because they think carb loading is not important as protein. But when you train for a marathon, your carb load will be a little bit higher than your protein and fiber intake. So, but definitely Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and the morning off. But and I keep saying your PR is good as your last meal. So keep that in mind.
Okay, better make sure those meals are sorted.
Yeah.
I like that. So we are running up on time here. We have a couple minutes left. and I have a question for all of you guys. So, Summer, maybe I'll start with you on this. What was your favorite moment, or I know you've just run one marathon, so you have one good one to pick from. What was your favorite moment during a race or that race that you like remember and think about, like, oh my gosh, this is so incredible. I can't believe I'm doing this. I get to be here. Was there something just like really stood out to you? And I know a lot of the people on this panel have also run a couple races. So if there's a special race or moment, I'd love to hear about it. But Summer, we'll start with you.
I think I would say being able to just experience the community even on the course, like as we're all trying to accomplish this monumental goal. Everyone is running, putting their best effort. You just hear people saying, "We got this," or "Let's go," or "Keep going," and just kind of feeling like me and 50,000 strangers are in this together. And that was so different than like doing all the long runs and that being like a solo venture to then being together with this huge group of like-minded people who are just like, we're celebrating and we can finish this really tough and big task. And I think that really stayed with me because sometimes it's easy to feel very serious about running, which I think is good, but also just to remember like running is a celebration and running is meant to be fun and you're meant to enjoy your time doing this thing that requires so much from you, but also is a testament to how strong and how capable you are. So.
I love it, Summer. Yeah, thanks for sharing. The crowds really can be so electric and like just keep you going. So, and the community there. Dev, I'm going to put you on the spot next.
Okay. I have two answers. The first one is Shalane Flanagan's New York City win is my favorite running moment. That is not one of mine, but my favorite to have like observed. She's a Tar Heel, I'm a Tar Heel. It was an incredible moment for American women running. And I highly recommend that you all watch the clip of that finish and try not to cry, and you'll probably fail. So love that moment. For myself, I think it was the first time that I ran the Richmond Marathon. Also, plug for Richmond, great beginner marathon. It's medium sized, easy to get to, usually good weather. Check, check, check. That was the race I was trying to qualify for Boston at for the first time. And I lined up with the pacer, with a bunch of other nervous people trying to qualify. And I made friends with this woman standing next to me who I had never seen before in my entire life. And we ran the entire thing together. We're like still buddies on Strava. I see her at races sometimes. She's like, at the time, I think I was like 21 and she was 32, 10-year age difference, whatever. We're pals. And it was really cool because I am typically a lone wolf when I run. I train alone most of the time. But to have found a running friend on a very important day where you both nailed it was pretty special. So that's hard to beat.
Wow, right person, right time, right place. That's really special, Dev. And I love that you guys are still follow each other's running journeys.
Oh yeah, Kelly, she's the best.
There you go. Willis, will you tell us about a special moment for you?
Yeah, so I guess a couple of special moments. So I had, as I mentioned earlier, on this chat, I had a chance to run the Tokyo Marathon this past spring, and it was really awesome. Tokyo Marathon, the course has a lot of out and backs, and so I was in a fortunate position where on one of those out and backs, I was able to catch the elite pack, be able to see them run past me. And I was able to come within a few feet of Eliud Kipchoge. He was running on opposite direction, while I think it was after the halfway point, and he was heading towards probably like mile 17 or it's like mile 16, 17, 18 of the race. But I got to see him in the flesh running past me, and I thought that was probably the most amazing experience. I was like, oh wow, this is incredible. Just be able to see one of the greatest of all time marathoners up close like that, especially in a race like that. Personally for me, I think one of the special moments I still remember and talk about to this day is when I ran the London Marathon in April 2023 last spring. I remember just holding for dear life down the stretch in the last 2 to 3 miles. I remember turning onto Big Ben and Parliament and running past it and heading towards Buckingham Palace. And then that's when I remember there's a lot of crowds left and right just cheering all of us on as we covered the last mile. And I looked down at my watch and I realized I realized that the sub 3 hours was mine. It was for taking. All I needed to do is hold on and secure it. And I realized my dreams were come true. And I still remember to this day, it was like, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe I did it.
That's so special. What a great moment. Breaking 3 is such a big effort and like such a big barrier. So still another congrats on that.
Thank you.
Steve, I'm going to come to you and then Mo will finish up with you. Do you have any special race moments or maybe even one with an athlete? I know you have a ton of athletes as well. Something that sticks out to you?
Yeah, I think the one I keep thinking about, it was maybe 2019. I think we had a lot of Brooklyn Track Club athletes run the New York City Marathon, and that year was really special because we had so many just really tight knit pace groups. I'm sure you guys have it. And certain years we have up to 200 people that race. So we have these super tight pace groups that are training together from June all the way through November. And there was a group of 4 guys who they all were different places in their life. They all got together. It's a group that should never have been training together. And they put in 16 weeks of training. They got through it all. They showed up on race day. They started the race together. They all had the same goal. Throughout the race, they all went in very different directions. And around like mile 22 or 23, they all kind of collided back together. Some were going backwards because they'd gone out too hard. Some were really making up ground. Some were kind of in the middle. And when they got together around mile 21, 22, as they were coming into Manhattan, they all packed up. And I got to see them twice between there and the finish line. And they just stuck it out. They were supporting each other. They were handing each other bottles. They were just being motivating and trying to lean into mantras and positive self-talk. And they ended up crossing the line together. And a couple of them kind of gave up their goal to make sure that they all got there and made it to the finish line. And it was just one of those moments where you're like, wow, this is so much bigger than a specific time or something like that. And to this day, they all still, I see on Strava, they all still train together and do runs together, and we still have them at practice. But I think it just speaks to the power of the marathon and to the whole experience and how it can really bring those bonds. I know a lot of people talked about running partners and things here, but those are always the ones that really make a long lasting impression on me, and people just being able to lean in on each other and really motivate each other. Your words out there mean something when you say good job, or let's keep going, or hey, like stick with me. Don't feel like you're alone. Speak out, and people are going to talk to you, and just receive it well and keep giving it out. And there's a lot of good positivity out there.
That's such a cool story. Camaraderie is so powerful in sport, and it's incredible to see what people can do when they really band together. Especially even more incredible when someone rises to that occasion and puts others before themselves just so that they can all be together. That's really awesome. For our last panelist, Mo, to go, I know you have had an incredible career and so many incredible races. I feel like it'll be hard for you to pick one, but you can pick more than one if you'd like, but I'd love to hear it.
It's very easy. It was my first run, which is a race. My first run was a half marathon. So that was my first run I did in 2008. So I did the half marathon. I finished it like a 1 hour, 50 minute. So I think that was the highlight of my beginning of my journey. And then, of course, I mean, without no doubt, the last 400 meters of the Olympics race. I think because I was the only guy who represented Jordan in the marathon, and I was like, the country send you to finish, not to start. So when you see the finish line, you're actually gonna crawl it. So, but thankfully we came up with a good in one piece and we finished it. So, but yeah.
That story gives me chills because I've heard you say that Jordan, the country Jordan has sent you to finish the race, not just to start it, and you did that. And not only that, but we all got to share a little piece of the journey with you, all of NETC, so many people in DC. I saw there was an article from Washingtonian about you, and it just felt like this whole community came together and just wanted to see you succeed and cheer you on. You could have been last or first, and we would have been so proud of you. So that was a really special experience too. Now we're overtime, which is because I'm chatty, but I just want to say one more time, thank you all for being here. And this was such a good conversation. I feel like I learned a ton. I hope the audience learned. And I know James was behind the scene kind of organizing stuff for us. So a nod to James. But yeah, I'll just end it by saying thank you. Tons of gratitude for everyone on this panel. This was awesome to have you all. And thank you to the audience for sticking around. I know 7 to 8:30, an hour and a half of your Thursday night. But excited to see everyone's marathons. Can't wait to cheer you guys all on, and we will see each other soon. But thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Molly. We should do it.
Thanks, Molly. Thanks, everyone.
Molly.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Molly.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you, everybody. Miss you guys.